Welcome, everybody. I've got Couture from the Lord of the Rings PC. They have been busy at work. They just ran a world championship. They've been doing updates to Gemp, and there's a second virtual set coming out, and we're actually going to spoil a card today. So we have a pretty exciting show. But at the front end, I do want to do some housekeeping here and say thank you to Category 1 Games for, you might notice this is a somewhat higher quality video. They have bought officially sponsored the channel and bought a streaming StreamYard premium service, so no more logo up there in the top right. So big shout out to Scott. Check out his store. Wonderful place to pick up all the stuff we're talking about today. But Couture, welcome. I feel like we haven't chatted in like a year. So you guys have been busy little bees over there, just crafting away, doing the hard, quiet work.
Some quiet, some not so quiet, but yeah, it's
So talk to me. What have you guys been up to? The World Championships just finished, and this is going to lead into some errata stuff. So what have you guys been working on?
so as a lot of people are aware of, we did just have that World Championship back in October, and we have been working on getting all the prizes and things for that out. There have been some delays in some of the stuff that we've ordered, so we're still waiting on all that to get together before we can get them going. But besides that, we have been, like you said, quite busy getting some of the things ready in response to what went down at the World Championship. We've got the Balance Council within the Players Council that has been taking a close look at the decks that were used and the meta that was arising during that World Championship. And so they've been doing a lot of work trying to identify what exactly is, the kind of the pain points, the repeated abuses that were showing up. And so a lot of people know that on December 6th, we're going to be releasing set V2, King of the Golden Hall. But along with that, there's actually going to be a series of balance errata. I'm not going to be showing the exact text that we're going to be doing just yet, because there are a couple of them that are still in flux. We'll probably keep working on it right up until the day of release. But you can kind of see some of the major cards that we identified appear to be problems. The big two ones that we think being Denethor, Lord of Minas Tirith, and Save from the Fire. That there were just one too many decks that were reliant on tutoring these cards out of your deck. And so we're going to be addressing those, nerfing those somewhat, as well as some of these other cards you can see highlighted here on screen, including the ever infamous Legolas Greenleaf. We are finally going to be taking a look at some of those and knocking them down a notch. But even besides all these highlighted ones here, all the rest of these are, for the most part, buffs that we are going to be releasing. We're going to be trying to introduce a lot more variety. There's some of the copies of certain characters that just always get used, and so rather than just nerfing every single one that got used, we're going to attempt to make some of the alternatives more appealing. So we've got a lot of interesting changes along with with that going out.
So, I mean, you think the World Championship as this jumping off ground to gather this real time feedback is a really great, obviously sort of externality, if you will. But on World Championship, this was run on Gemp, obviously. And how many total players did you have participating?
So we had a grand total of 28 people sign up. A grand total of 28 show up. We had a few more that signed up that did not actually arrive. They competed at the group stage, and then that group stage winnowed down to the top 8. And we did a decent amount of analysis trying to see what made those top 8, and actually we looked at the top 10. What made those decks different, and how were they successful against other people? And there were certain patterns that that emerged. But yeah, quite a few decks. All of them are published on the Last Homely House. You can go take a look at all of them. Kind of a big variety of stuff actually that people tried to bring. Not all of them were successful, of course, but Gondor was definitely the breakout success. Lots of different decks using Gondor based strategies, or usually as a mix of Gondor Elf or Gondor Gandalf or something. But that was definitely the big one. But we were actually surprised at some of the ways in which variety showed up. One of the changes that the PC has made to the PC movie format is that we now utilize a system for the adventure path called multipath, where you can bring either a Fellowship or a Towers or a Return of the King path. And one of the things that we were quite pleased with was that in those top 10 decks, each one of the 3 paths were represented. So you had about 3 going Towers, 3 going Fellowship, and 4 going Return of the King, which was just about as evenly split as you could possibly hope. So that particular aspect we were very pleased with, as far as how balanced that came out. But obviously that's not all of your deck. So there's other things that we do want to work on knocking down and helping out. And
what are
so
you calling this grand errata? Is it's like you had a funny term I feel like you used, but the
yeah.
grand errata challenge?
We have the post World Championship errata that's going to be going out. But then besides that, we've also got 2 other things that are going to be released at the same time. So there's V2, of course, that we've been spoiling every day and talking about, giving little tidbits. But there's also an initiative that I've been calling the Grand Card Rework, which is what you were referring to. So I'll try to avoid the technical details, but when Gemp was first developed, cards were written in a way that were very rigid, that are built into the code of the server. And so anytime that you want to make any alterations to those cards, you have to restart the server and you have to redeploy a brand new version of it. This was something that Marcinez realized a long time ago is kind of untenable if you're going to have continual maintenance, if you're going to be issuing balance updates and things like that. It's just not very flexible. So he came up with a new way of representing cards using just text as data. And so with that, if you have a change, you can just press a button and it will automatically reload the card definition. And so we can issue bug fixes and balance changes and things like that without needing to do a big whole update and just adding friction to that process. And so as part of this initiative, he went and rewrote 2,000 cards on Gemp from the old format to the new format, which is a huge amount of work that he was able to put in. And as part of that, now we had to do a whole lot of play testing over the last few months trying to identify any bugs that were there. But we finally got it to a point where I think most of the bugs that are there are that still remain are kind of smaller edge case sorts of things. So we're comfortable releasing this finally. And as part of this grand card rework, there's actually a number of new features that we're going to be able to build on it in the future. Now that the cards have all been converted to a new process and a new format, and some of these are going to result. Some of these we're actually going to start leveraging here in the Gemp update itself. There's going to be some new deck building filters and things that we can do now that we were unable to do before. So this update on the 6th is just going to have all sorts of things. We're going to have UI updates. We're going to have the card format updates. We're going to have set V2 being released. We're going to have the balance errata going out. There's just all kinds of stuff here. Quite big.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about V2? So you've obviously there's been spoilers up. If you've missed the spoilers, we're gonna have some links in the show notes so you can click through and see the spoilers. But is there sort of a theme that you're going for with this? Maybe Rohan?
Well, yeah. Well, absolutely, yeah. So set V1, Shadow of the Past, was intended to be a supplement to Fellowship of the Ring, right? It was intended to fill in some of those things that just didn't get, that got overlooked when Fellowship was being developed. And so V2 is doing the exact same thing for the 2 towers. So we are really focusing heavily on the things that were big during Towers block, which, as you've observed, that's Rohan and Isengard. Those 2 are really getting a huge boost in the number of things that we're adding. We're trying to. What Rohan is not very well represented in PC movie or even in regular Decipher movie. There were a few people that tried to bring it to the group stage, but and even a few in the top 10 that did make it just on their own prowess, I think. But Rohan is still kind of underserved. And so we've, if you've been following into the spoilers, that there's quite a few new things that we're doing with Rohan. We're really fleshing out the Valiant keyword, adding that to the Nath elves and things like that. And we've got quite a few cool things still coming down the pipe. And you mentioned earlier that we were going to spoil a card. You can see down here that there's some other interesting, tantalizing titles here, and one of these is the Balrog Bonanza. So I'm going to go ahead and reveal what that Balrog is going to be referring to here.
I just want to say, as you do this reveal, great naming of all of these. Like this is. I wish I could be on the naming committee for the blog posts. Maybe I'll. It's just some great creativity here.
I had fun with that. That was I handled most of the blog posts, and so that was fun to do.
Balrog Bonanza is just a great one. So I think we're gonna spoil a card here. So might be related to Balrog Bonanza.
Naturally, yeah. So the big thing that we're going to be doing here is releasing a new Balrog. The intent being that it's going to be a Balrog that can stand on its own, that's not tied to Underground quite so much, so that you can use it as your big bad in your deck to really discourage people from having these enormous fellowships. So yeah, it's right up here on screen right now. You can see that we add the ability for Moria here to interact with threats. So that
I
is
think
going
it
to
may
be a
not be on
big.
the screen just quite yet. I think maybe you get the wrong tab up. I
Oh
think it was
goodness.
a little blog post.
Oh, I see. So it wasn't sharing my whole screen. Okay, let me think where this is. One moment. I thought I had that already, and
No, it's okay. We do this stuff in live time. But I'm just looking at the other blog posts. So, like I said, links for this stuff. If you guys want, check out their blogs. I've been following along. How many total cards are going to be in the set, by the way?
so there's going to be a grand total of 76. Three of
Okay,
those are going to be the map cards that everyone's already familiar with. We did release those a bit early, but they were designed for V2, and so they're going to be included there. But all the rest of them are, yes, so about 73 brand new cards that nobody's seen before these reveals.
I'd love to know how you choose the movie stills for it. It's
So
like,
that's actually a very fun process that we have to force ourselves to leave until the very end, because it's very easy, I think, for fan projects to accidentally spend all their effort while they're excited doing the fun bits, and so we have to absolutely make sure that we leave that till the end. But it's really just a matter of um, being very familiar with the movies. I have the 4K versions at home, and so we have a big old index of all the different scenes. And so if we're looking for an orc or looking for anything like that, we we know to try and
okay,
go to this
that's
scene and that. So is the Balrog showing up now? Is that showing up on my
yeah.
screen?
This is a great image. So
Balrog images are few and far between. Decipher used almost all of them, but this particular one is from the fight between Gandalf and the Balrog in the scene in the Two Towers where they're fighting on the Mount of Xerekzagul. And this is one of the ones where he jumps out of the cloud right before Gandalf starts calling down the lightning on his sword. So that was one of the few images of the Balrog that Decipher had not already used. So that was had that took some detective work to track down. But
now,
go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, so I was going to say, so like I was mentioning earlier, some of the Moria cards here that are going to be in this set are dealing with threats, adding threat access to Moria, mostly via the Balrog. And so here he's got text that says that every time any minion on the field takes a wound, you can remove one to add a threat. And so he's going to be there to be a big fellowship punishing big bad. So.
At 14, it seems like he might be hard to get out before like turn 7, maybe 6.
So that's definitely true. However, in PC Movie, because it's multipath, you can use the Fellowship site path. So you can use the good old Bridge of Khazad-dûm to bring this guy out and knock his cost down. There's also other cards that you can use, such as Power and Terror and other things to pull him out and get him out early. And in PC Movie, honestly, just has more Twilight in it than a lot of earlier formats. So I think it'll be worth trying to make him work.
Yeah. No, so that looks like a real. I'm excited to see what other cards might accompany him as well in that Balrog Bonanza post.
Yeah. Well, it'll be out a few days after this video.
Okay, so we have a lot of Rohan. I'm curious, do you want to talk a little bit about what the future beyond V2 is as well? So you're doing this grand card rework. You got V2 coming out. What's sort of the PC's vision of where to take the game? You're running world championships, which is really awesome. How do you kind of like see this playing out as far as your stewardship of the game long term?
So my personal goal for the PC is to get us into a place where we are able to release new sets that have to do with anything from any of Tolkien's Legendarium, and have it slot right in, to have it be releasable and very straightforward for people to start playing new sets based on things that are not even necessarily in the movies. I want us to be able to go in and release some Hobbit sets. I want us to be able to release stuff based on the Silmarillion. And so everything that I do as we work towards changing how these formats work and introducing new mechanics and redefining um, how the game works at its core is with that goal in mind of making it so that we can tell these alternate stories within the framework of the Lord of the Rings trading card game. So the goal will be that for V3, it's going to be just like V1 and V2 were based on Fellowship and Towers. There's going to be a V3 that is going to be heavily focused on Return of the King. And with that, we are going to start really looking at introducing new mechanics, which is something that we haven't done too much of up till now. We have released new cards, of course, but they are usually filling in existing mechanics. But this is going to be our first foray into actually introducing brand new novel things within the game. I have in the past on some of the past streams mentioned the hinder mechanic that we want to introduce. That is going to be sort of a temporary discard um, for things. Instead of needing to bounce things back to your hand, it will temporarily disable a card on the field. And so we'll be working towards introducing those sorts of mechanics. But then in the future, we will take that experience as we introduce those concepts to people both old and new, and then work towards redefining what the ring bearer means at the center of the game. Right now, it's very difficult to introduce any sort of story that is not based on Frodo holding the one ring, right? Because everything is built around it. You have to have a ring bearer. You have to have a one ring, and so it makes the game kind of brittle in that way. But so we're going to work towards redefining how what your premise of the story is. And so rather than bringing a ring bearer and a ring, we're thinking that we're going to move in the direction of bringing more of a generic hero with a fate and a quest that they're trying to accomplish. And so then you still have that one ring quest that Frodo is going on. That's going to be the default, of course, that everything falls back on. But you'll be able to say, all right, now we're going to have a quest that's built around Theoden, and he's going to be your main character, the replacement for the ring bearer. And that's going to allow us in the future to pivot towards things like, okay, now we're going to do a Hobbit set, and Bilbo is your main character. Yeah, he has a ring, but the quest is not about the One Ring, right? And then we can do other things. We can move into the Silmarillion and have a Baron and Luthien hero and quest and fate, and really, really work in that direction of making it more flexible with what stories you can tell without compromising what exactly it is you're doing on the table itself. Like the day-to-day gameplay will largely be the same, but really I want to be able to say that we are presenting these stories that are inaccessible from the current standpoint of the game.
That is incredibly well put. I've thought about this a lot, and this is one of the issues I've had with Lord of the Rings TCG is sort of the replay value for me. It's just I don't always want to destroy the ring. Maybe the hero and the quest, I want to crown Aragorn King of Gondor, right? And you can do the same
Exactly.
thing along 9 sites. He's trekking to Minas Tirith to go overthrow Denethor or something, right? Whatever it is, but I think if you guys can make that work, then it's going to be something really special. And I have a bias. I'm coming from Star Wars CCG where everyone runs objectives, right? Where you have
Mhm.
this platform that, they added this objectives module, which basically makes the telling those stories, whether it's blowing up the Death Star, whatever, very possible. And I think this game has the right engine for it. It just needs to be done very thoughtfully. And it seems like you guys have a really thoughtful approach there. So I'm really encouraged to hear that because I even think with sort of going into Shadows block and expanded, it just this destroying a ring becomes more clunky the farther you get in, and you're like, wait, why does Radagast the Brown, like why is he here? And he gets your next, like it gets clunkier as you get more characters into it, and I think it's a very nice, almost contained mini board game in a sense where it's just fellowship block and the meta's solved and all this stuff. But if you truly want to have a more robust, longer term, game, I think you need to have alternative win conditions.
Yeah,
And
and this was definitely something that Decipher themselves struggled with because Shadows, as much as we love to hate on Shadows and some of the things that were introduced with it, you have to admit, like what direction could Decipher have possibly gone in? They had built their entire game around the regular releases of the movies, and now they had no movies to base further sets on. Where do you go? And so they kind of leaned into making kind of an arcadey experience where you're no longer following a specific story anymore. They tried to make it more freeform, And a lot of people that are still fans of the expanded experience, I think that they appreciate that free formness, that it's really just about the mechanics as opposed to the story. But yeah, there's a lot of us that also recognize that, hey, it became less about what you were doing and or why you were doing anything, what story you were trying to tell. And that is really what I'm trying to really get us to, is I want to get us to a point where the game is once more like it was in Fellowship, where not only were there great mechanics, but there was also great theming and great story, and they were really perfectly merged and married together. And so that, there's going to be a lot of work, and a lot of plans that we have for this, but everything that I do is moving us in that direction of trying to get us to that point. So
Well, I think that's just so encouraging for someone who really enjoys this game and played a lot of it and just got tired of playing it. So I kind of moved into the collecting side of things. I was like, "Yeah, I can collect these cards and have some decks around," but I just got kind of tired of replaying the same story. And so I think that's really encouraging, but also, a lot of creative work and thoughtful work ahead. So this is also just a call for folks listening. If you want to get involved as a playtester, as a volunteer, that reach out. This is not a giant scary bureaucracy. This is guys whose passion is this game and this platform. So I think there's a really great opportunity for folks that are interested in volunteering or getting involved. You say like, "Hey, that sounds like a really cool creative endeavor, and I've always wished to be a game designer. That's sort of like my day job, but it turns out I work in an office, but I have great skills with Excel." I mean, this is what I tell some people, like, people work in these fan projects or whatever, players committees, players councils. This is kind of the dream job. Like, I grew up wanting to be a game designer when I was like 16, 17, and obviously I didn't end up going to Full Sail and doing whatever that, that path of being a video game designer, but I can do this in my free time, and I find this stuff to be really rewarding. So I do want to give you guys a big shout out, not to pat you on the back too much, but you got a lot of hard work ahead. They'll also probably have some loud voices in the room, and I encourage you to just tune out the noise sometimes and keep an eye on that bigger vision.
yeah, there's no pleasing everybody. We have an annual survey that we send out, and we like to look at the responses that people give. And one of the things that always makes me laugh is that there will be a contingent of people that love the errata that we're doing but don't like the VSETs, and then there will be another set of people that love the VSETs that we're doing but don't like the errata. And it's just like, yeah, there's no pleasing everybody. So we'll just have to hold to our own vision and hope that people are willing to trust in that. And it'll get most everybody most of the way there for what they're looking at.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe in the future we can do some like kind of getting started videos or like something that like to try to get that new folks into it. I think with all of these games, you're reaching a point where everyone who collected or played it back in the day has reemerged, and so you need to start tapping into new player pools if you want to grow the game. And
That is
obviously,
absolutely a thing that is always on my mind. One of the things that is difficult about that, from my perspective, is how GIMP is really kind of old school in its presentation. It looks very much like a website from the 90s. And so we're really trying to work in a direction where we can start upgrading those things and get it to look a little less intimidating. There are a number of other groups that are trying to set up their own GEMPs right now, actually. There's one for the Star Trek group, and there's one for even the old Wars TCG, the one that Decipher did, that are looking to work on that. And so I'm actually hoping over the next year to start merging all of our efforts together a little more, and making it so that we have these a version of this software that we're able to all contribute on across these different groups, and really hopefully try to get us to a point where we can finally start upgrading how this looks, and introduce some new features like tutorials and things like that to really make it so that it's easier for new players to get slotted in, because that's something that absolutely is necessary for a game like this. We can all hold on to what we enjoyed playing 20 years ago, but if we don't evolve and if we don't inject fresh blood into the ecosystem, it's just eventually going to die. So that's definitely never far from my mind, whenever thinking about what
well, this
direction
is
we
actually a great way to close out. Do you want to show off some of the sort of updates that you guys have done in GEMP? I think
absolutely, yeah. So
already GEMP looks better than the Star Wars CCG GEMP. I'm sorry, guys. It does. You guys have a better looking product. So I do want to give give props there.
So there's a number of changes that we're going to be introducing on December 6th, besides just the V2 and the errata and the Grand Card rework, which itself is kind of an internal rework. You're not going to see a whole lot different from there. But there's a number of small things that have been changing. So let me just hop into the deck builder real quick. And one of the first things that you may see here is that the filters over here have dramatically changed. One of the things that is now different is that the drop down over here that defines what format that you're doing directly feeds into what happens over here. So if I come over here and say that I want to play Fellowship Block PC, over here, instead of a generic format filter, there's now a block section and a set section. So this for Fellowship Block PC, there's only, well, actually, let me just switch to Decipher Fellowship Block real quick. So you've really only got Fellowship Block available. So that now you don't have 10,000 different things in that filter. It's a lot easier to get through. If you want to, come down to the different sets, you can still do so. But this is, now you don't have to set the format in two different places, right? It's a little bit easier for you to work with. One of the things that was changed with that Grand Card rework that we did was that we finally have the game text of the cards in the card data itself. So now I can actually search in the game text here. So I could go ahead and type in the word tracker, and now we can find every card that references the word tracker, not just is the card a tracker itself. But so now I can do all kinds of searches here that were more difficult to do in the past, or you had to hop over to the wiki or something. There's also filtering based on stats, which we didn't have before. So if I wanted to try and find things that were like greater than 10 strength, for instance, I can come over here and hit a filter, and now I can take a look at all those big minions. If I'm looking for something big that I'm trying to fit in, all sorts of little tweaks that were made over here. We've also introduced some clearing filter buttons, so now you can finally just clear everything out instead of having to do all that stuff manually. We've also added a one-click filter for sites. So now if you click over here in the sites section, it will automatically switch the filter properly for you, and now you have your sites to go through. For PC movie only, we've also got the ability for us to filter through blocks. So if, like I mentioned before, if you're trying to set up a towers block site path, you click on the sites over here and then just change the filter up here to the towers block, and now you've got all the tower sites all sorted by site number. So a lot of things there that different quality of life improvements, and all these filter changes here are going to be coming here on the 6th. But kind of tying back into what we were talking about making things more accessible to new users, one of the big features that I'm really looking forward to is that we now have the ability to mark cards that are inactive. So here, all these cards that are marked as gray tell us that it is currently this player up here who is currently playing as the Fellowship player. So all of the Fellowship cards on the other player's side are now all grayed out, which makes it at a glance so much easier to tell what's currently in play and what's not. I think that this is going to be useful for new players. It's also useful for us as people who often spectate, being able to jump in and immediately see, okay, this is the guy that's currently playing. This is what's going on. I'm really looking forward to getting this into people's hands.
I think that those quality of life, changes are easy to write off as window dressing, but fundamentally, the play experience is transformed when you can build a deck more easily, when you don't feel like you're using a piece of software from like 1999 or something.
Mhm.
It just makes it so much more accessible to people that are coming from places like Magic Arena that has a multi-billion-dollar company supporting the software, and there's like, what do you mean there's not explosions when you cast a
Yeah.
spell? Like, and I think it's just really hard to compete against that when you're like, you can't play in person. The fun of playing in person is being in person and talking to your buddies, whatever. But you can at least make the experience of building a deck easier and more accessible if you
Oh,
can't
speaking of accessibility, actually, so one of the new things that we've added with that game text is that now all cards are going to show their game text fully here in the right click menu when you right click on things, which for those of us that are English speaking is kind of whatever, but our particular community is international, and I know that a good number of players that have English as a second language, or maybe don't even really speak English all that well, can use this to plug into automatic translation plugins
Mhm.
for their browser. So it'll automatically make this more accessible to them, because previously when it was just an image, they were just kind of hosed. But so now that's going to be there for them to be able to use. I'm definitely looking forward to having that out there. So
There are so many other questions in my brain right now about growing the community and where you think the target, like is the US even the target market, or maybe it's Brazil? But
Well, or Czechia, which one of the so we do have one of the members of the Czechian community who recently decided to join the Players Council, which we were very happy about. He was one of the top 10 players at Worlds. They play to win. They've got a very tight knit community that is always sharpening themselves against each other. And so we're excited to try to bring on more of them onto the Balance Council and talking about the balance at a high level of play. But yeah, like this is not just a US centric community. Where even I would maybe even say that we're probably only about a third or so of the active player base. There's it's not like some of the other PCs that are primarily just a US based organization. Like we have to be international because that's what the players are.
yeah, it's both like a challenge as well as an opportunity, right? When you're
Mhm.
not just thinking about local game stores across the US kind of thing. It's a much broader community, but you also have the language issues, as you mentioned. But I think you're doing good, finding clever ways of addressing some of those.
And in fact, one of the things that I want to do in the future here, now that we have finally converted all the cards, it should be accessible now to us to start having language switching on these card images. I would like to be able to say that, okay, if you speak Portuguese, you can switch the cards over to Portuguese if you want. And in fact, what we're going to have to start doing sometime in the future is we're going to have to put together some fan translation projects because not all the cards were released in all languages for all sets, right? Um, I know that, for instance, there is a Polish project right now where there's some people trying to convert all of the cards in the game to Polish for their community, and I would really like to be able to see that for French and Portuguese and Czech and whatever other languages would best serve our users, so that they can have it be as accessible as possible. So that's something I'd like to get started down the line.
Yeah, I think fortunately for you guys, most of the languages that players are playing in are easy to translate from English. Like I think Japanese is one with Star Wars CCG. Some of the translations to Japanese end up being extremely clunky and odd, and that's why those sets didn't sell, is because the translations were like nonsense, like for Japanese actual players and like it. So
Well, and from what I've heard from Morvale, one of the guys doing their Polish translation, apparently they were some of the, even just the simpler things like Polish. Like it's difficult to say what languages are simple to translate into, but even just from their perspective, using more or less the same script, they did not have very good translations either. The people that were choosing game terms were choosing game terms that were very old or odd or just not fitting with the game and things like that. So that's something that will take some very dedicated nitpickers, I think, to really sit down and say, okay, how do we actually translate this properly into our language? And I would definitely love to set up the infrastructure and the tooling for people to be able to have those projects get somewhere. We have this card generator. It's more or less straightforward for us to take a translation and turn it into an image, and then if we can have Gemp take that image and tie it into a language setting. I just think that all the pieces are there. We just need to get them all working.
So I want to close out by saying keep doing the quiet hard work, because this stuff is appreciated. I think that you guys have collectively spent probably hundreds or thousands of hours sitting, the back end of Gemp, of the Discord stuff, just doing a lot of work on nights and weekends. This is no one's paid job. That's whenever people get grumpy about PCs, in comments and chats, I'm like, this is a volunteer crew. No one's receiving any sort of compensation, and they do this because they enjoy the game. And I think that's just something I always keep in mind. So thank you so much for showing off the World Championship, V2, spoiling that Balrog, as well as the Gemp updates. I'm excited to see where this game goes. I think I might give it another shot with V2 and then tinker around and make some decks. So, any kind of closing thoughts here?
Um, so yeah, just on December 6th, that's when all of this is going to be going out. We'll be kicking off some of our annual Yuletide leagues at the same time. So you'll be able to always be able to find games. I'm sure if any of these things on V2 excite you, that this is never been a greater time to re-enter the game and re-explore what's going on with it. As mentioned earlier, if you are feeling like you would have a particularly good insight for game development or game balance, or anything, any of the projects that we've talked about here appeal to you, don't hesitate to join the Players Council. We're always like, there's no barrier that you have to, make your way through. It's literally just signing filling out a form, and joining up with us. So we can always use more voices. We can always use more people. If you have a project that you think the PC would be able to uniquely support, reach out to us. There's all sorts of people that work on smaller things that we're able to help out with, even if we don't necessarily take control of your project. So like, we're here to help this game flourish. So reach out to us, join us, help us make this game be the best that it can be. I've always felt that this game deserves to continue existing, to have an excited, large, varied player base, because it's one of the best games I've ever played.
Well put. We're going to close there. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. In the show notes are links to a plethora of resources. So check that stuff out if you want to get involved, or check out the Discord. But that's all the time we have today. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you guys later.